guys, how's everyone feeling today? Welcome back to another episode of Falcor's amazing, fantastic adventures. Today we're going to take another break from talking about cancer treatment. And before we continue, beard check. As you can see, already the goatee is forming. You all voted no to shaving because you want to make mockery of me, I get it. But I'll respect your judgment, and hopefully we're going to see something interesting. Last time I ended up shaving this goatee thing, so we're all going to see how I'm going to look after like a month or so. Excuse me. On the other hand, today we're going to talk about an interesting subject, and that is food and diet. Oh, you must be thinking, oh, well, that's boring. But actually, I think I can convince you that this is actually a pretty fascinating subject. Before I say anything about this, I just want to clarify. I'm no nutritionist. I'm just an agricultural engineer who had to study nutrition for animals. But at the same time, I will say, before anyone does any diet or researches this, nobody, and I'm telling you, nobody knows what the correct diet for humans is right now. You're going to find information that says you should only eat plants or mostly plants. Then you're going to hear information that says no, you should actually eat only meats and fats. And then you're going to hear people say no, the keto diet is the best, which is, we're going to get to what that is, but it's basically a high-fat diet where you put your body into something called ketosis. So they say that's the best diet. And you're going to find proof for all diets, basically. Proof that, a plant-based diet is best, proof that a meat-based diet is best. So nobody knows. Everyone seems to be changing their mind. Even the bodybuilders who used to be like, if the bodybuilders are doing it, then it must be good. Even they are having fights among themselves because some people are saying that the old way doesn't work and it's unhealthy. So anyway, take that into consideration the next time you choose what diet you want to do, and you just want to be healthy or you want to lose weight. There is no right answer. You're just going to have to trust whatever you try out, I suppose. What I can tell you is this: what am I going to base my opinion on food? What is it going to be based on? Well, nothing more or nothing less than how our body is built. So before getting into all the different kinds of diets, let's talk a little bit about the digestive system of animals. Okay, this is something I had to study in university. I might get some facts wrong, but this is the basic gist of it. You've got two main kinds of digestive systems in animals. You've got the polygastric ones, which are basically animals that have two or more stomachs. And you've got the monogastric animals, which include humans, and those have only one stomach. Polygastric ones tend to be what are called the ruminants, or rumiantes. Those are like cows and what's it called? Deer. Basically they're strict herbivores. They only eat plants, and they've built an entire digestive system that's been adapted specifically just to eat fiber plants. These plants by themselves don't carry all the nutrients and all the protein and amino acids they need. In fact, if you study their diets, you will find that the fiber they eat only really gives energy when it's broken down, and it doesn't really provide any protein or anything like that. And so you might be asking yourself, if that's true, then how do cows get so big? How do they survive? Well, let me tell you. You see, the four stomachs in let's say a cow. That's the stereotypical herbivore, right? Would be a cow. Let's just say. Let's just say you have a cow. It's got many stomachs, and what it does is, when it eats, it chews the vegetation. It chews the fibers really well with its teeth, and swallows it, and in their stomach, one of their stomachs, which is called the rumen, there's basically a whole bunch of bacteria. These are special bacteria that break down that fiber to produce what are called volatile fatty acids. That turns out to be the energy for the cow. In fact, you could say those fatty acids, which are a kind of fat, that's the main source of energy, just energy for the cows. Now, where do they get their protein? Well, they digest the microbes, they digest the bacteria in their stomach, because eventually those bacteria die or are digested. Simply they go down the digestive tract, and that is broken down, and that gives them all the amino acids and all the proteins they need. That's a very simple way of describing it. But the most important part is they have a whole digestive system that's adapted over who knows how much time in order to be able to digest only plant. So that's how we start off with the herbivores. Then you've got the monogastric ones, and there you can divide them basically into two. You've got the simple monogastric animals, which would be sort of the carnivores and most omnivores. But then you've got adapted herbivores that are monogastric. Two good examples of this are gorillas and also bunnies, and also the most common example for hindgut, they're called hindgut, adapted herbivores, would be the horse, the common horse. And they grow up to be huge, and they only eat fiber. You know, they're not carnivores or omnivores. They only eat fiber. So how do they do that? Well, what happened is that they adapted their digestive system so that their small intestine shrank over time, and their large intestine, which is like the back part of the digestive system, adapted in order to make their own like sort of fermentation chamber. Remember we talked about the rumen being like a sort of huge fermentation chamber where bacteria break down the fibers of the plants? Well, the same thing happens in this huge gut that they have, which sort of ferments. It's not as efficient as a four stomach system like the cows have, but it's still extremely efficient. It just, there's a higher chance of problems occurring, and you know, it's not ideal, but still very powerful creatures, and gorillas as well. And this will be kind of gross, but gorillas and rabbits both have this thing that they have to do, which is, it's got a technical name, but they eat their own crap to redigest it and get even more out of their food, which is just fiber, it's just plants. So why am I saying this? Humans, on the other hand, are monogastric, but they don't have an extended hindgut. They don't have fermentation in their digestive system. They don't have the bacteria necessary to ferment and break down and actually absorb the nutrients in plants. Sure, you will absorb certain nutrients that become available by breaking physically down the vegetables. For example, you're biting it, crushing it, and certain nutrients will definitely be more available. But whatever you're expecting to find from actually breaking down the tissue, you won't. You won't, unless the plant has adapted to provide some kind of nutrient, let's say by providing fruits and expecting living beings to eat the fruits so that they carry the seeds and, you know, propagation and all that. Unless the plant is adapted for that, most plants are absolutely not edible to human beings or any other carnivore-ish monogastric animal. And in fact, if you compare their digestive systems, our digestive systems are more similar to, the most similar one is pig, but you could also compare it to a dog's digestive system or other carnivores. And if you look at, for example, the teeth as well, you will notice that we have a very good mix of teeth. We have teeth that are good for crushing, for cutting, and slicing. We have teeth that are similar in the front. We have teeth that are similar to large cats and dogs. We have teeth that are similar to a horse's front teeth, with incisors that are made to sort of cut into flesh and also certain fruits. And then we have really in the back of our mouth, a few molars, and just barely a few, that aren't really even that effective for long-term use because they get used. Like comparing it to, for example, a cow. A cow has molars that grow constantly since they're born. We don't have molars that grow forever. Those do. There's a limit, of course. Eventually, they run out of teeth. but those molars are also much more more advanced. They're made for crushing and like grinding plants, while ours are more sort of made for crushing and biting and maybe a little bit of grinding. Also, eating lots of fiber and sugars, which are what comes with fruits, tends to produce what are called cavities, right? While eating meat doesn't tend to cause cavities. And since humans tend to be very likely to get cavities, there might be a dietary reason for that. So I'm just talking about a little bit of the background of where I'm basing my information on when it comes to what's the ideal diet. In my opinion, the ideal diet would be mostly meat and then mixed in with fruits. Not fruits, vegetables. And that's up to you, the percentage. But I would say, keep meats above 50% and add the vegetables to that. I'm not going to get into the whole carbohydrates thing. Maybe I might. Yeah, well, we might get into that actually. So now that we talked about what I base my knowledge on diets on, let's talk about the main diets. The human diet can be divided, or types of diets can be divided into a spectrum, which is from maximum plant diet, so maximum plant-based diet, which is like 100% only plants, nothing, no kind of animal derivatives, nothing. And this goes all the way up to people that only eat meat and animal derivatives. And these would be sort of like the carnivores. And in fact, there is a diet, which is carnivore diet, which I'm going to describe as well. But let's start with the plants, because they're the funniest. Now, you've probably heard of vegans, right? Veganism is considered right now, it's considered more of a belief system or an ethical system. In fact, you can insult a vegan by telling them that it's a diet, and they'll be like, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with diet. It's a way of thinking. It's loving animals and things like that. Truth is, ask a vegan if you're allowed to eat meat and be a vegan, and they'll be like, no. So I would say, come on, cut the crap. Veganism is strictly tied to what you eat. And what they eat, vegans, they only eat plants. So this can mean any kind of plant you can imagine. It can't be derived from an animal. Nothing derived from an animal can be eaten by a vegan. And vegans can be divided into two kinds. You've got the raw vegans, who are vegans that are a little more extreme. They don't allow themselves to eat any plant or anything at all that's been cooked or processed. They are only allowed to eat raw vegetables or fruits. Now, this is the thing. The other vegans are allowed to get cooked food, and you can eat processed things and things like that. So that opens up their diet considerably, because raw vegans soon realize when they start that in fact the only thing they can really eat are fruits and fruit shakes and certain kinds of vegetables, very few vegetables, because you will notice that in fact most vegetables, when they're eaten raw, are poisonous. So they're kind of screwed. So they're basing their diet almost completely on fruits, which are sugar-based food. You will find that fruits today, and in fact most of these fruits that they eat are absolutely not natural. They're genetically modified to be as sweet and as big as possible. But so they're already eating a non-natural diet, in my opinion. But anyway, they only eat fruits, and what happens is, over time, they become extremely malnourished. They will deny it all they want, but the truth is they become very malnourished. And this is something that you can actually check on YouTube. Some of the older vegan channels that began like 10 years ago, they began super healthy, you know, like normal looking people, probably health nuts. And then at some point they made the decision to turn to veganism. And maybe they started off non-raw vegan, and they cooked their food and they ate supplements, and because you have to take a lot of supplements as a vegan. This is just a fact, you know, especially B12 and things, and certain fatty acids and things like that. But the point is, they would start off with like cooked vegan food, and then in their extremeness they would turn to non-cooked, so only raw. And you would see their body deteriorate over time. They would lose hair, they would lose teeth, because you know they would have serious problems with their gums, for example. It's too much sugar, they're only eating sugar. Very dangerous. And it also affects your brain, because by not eating certain essential fatty acids and essential amino acids, which can only be found in animal-based products and meat, by not eating those, their mind lacks certain compounds, and they turn into a sort of, I wouldn't say a zombie, but it's more like in a survival mode, and their mind starts getting hysterical and things like that. And I'm not making this up. All you have to do is look up any vegan channel and look at their videos from before, and then look at them later. Like let's say from 5 years, and then one that came out recently, and you will see the deterioration in their eyes. It's hard for them to focus. They will even admit that they have skin problems and things like that. So I mean, the evidence is there, but that's for raw vegans. Cooked vegans have actually evolved quite a bit. They realized from the raw vegans that they can't keep this up just like that, and that in fact it's extremely unsustainable. Ask any proper vegan if you could survive as a vegan in the wild, and anyone with half a brain will tell you no. Veganism is not for any other time in human history, and veganism isn't for any other location. You have to be in a place where you have access to the supplements, money to buy the supplements, because it's extremely expensive, and all different kinds of foods and like vegetables that you get from importing from outside, because many countries, let's say in Europe, you don't have those foods unless you import them from tropical areas, for example. So you know, many vegans will even admit we're doing this now because we can finally do it, but in the past this would have been impossible, and in the wild, forget about it. And I really respect vegans that can admit that. So yeah, they're in my opinion, they're pretty ridiculous. And to me it's an unsustainable diet. The worst part is that vegans tend to be the most aggressive of the people doing special diets, because not only are they going crazy from the fact that they're malnourished, but also they have an ethical reason. So like they make it personal because they think it's about the animals, right? Fair enough. You know, like if it's about the animals, it's about the animals, so be it. But they combine that with the diet. They realize that their diet is killing them, but they don't want to betray the animals. They don't want to betray the ethics, so they're sort of stuck. And so that's what happens with vegans that cheat, you know, quotation marks. That happens in many YouTube channels as well, that they get caught cheating because they get caught, let's say, eating something, some kind of meat, or let's say on social media there was a tag picture of a girl eating a salmon, which is one of the main things vegans go to when they have to cheat, which is salmon, and the other thing is egg. You can also see this malnourishment and the psychological effects it has on you by the food that a raw vegan would eat. Sometimes they would put on vegan ketchup, lots of ketchup, because their mind is telling them, I want blood, I want meat, I need it. So they would drown everything with ketchup, or they would make fake eggs out of some other vegetable. You can find these vegan recipes everywhere, like vegan egg. There's no such thing as a vegan egg. But their brain and their body is craving these foods, but they just don't want to give it to themselves. And I'm just going to give you a couple of very dangerous symptoms that you can get from having long-term vegan diet. Because in the short term, you're not going to see them. First few years, you're going to be like maybe lower energy and things like that. But long term, I'm talking 5 years and more, you're going to start seeing some serious problems. One of them is a hormone imbalance. That's what, you know, the whole soy boy thing, how men have less testosterone. Well, women have a hormonal imbalance too, which can lead them to lose their period. Men lose the power, they lose the ability to have erections. Women lose their libido too. Then you've got loss of hair, you've got inability to focus, loss of teeth, I've said this before, and a whole bunch of other side effects that absolutely ruin your life permanently. They can be permanent. Of course, you know, by eating healthily again and adding protein, not protein, but meat to your diet, most of these things can be reversed, but there's a limit to how long your body can keep that up. And usually these long-term raw vegans tend to be emaciated. Like you see them and they're extremely skinny, very, very skinny. That's why they also attract a lot of people, because they're like, maybe I can be vegan for a little bit and lose some weight. So veganism basically turns into a high-carb diet that if you want to sustain for longer, you need supplements, and be ready to get other problems like diabetes and osteoporosis and things like that. You might have a vitamin deficiency, because there are certain vitamins that are only soluble in fat and can only be found in animal fat. You won't find that in avocado fat. So this is what I'm talking about, like plant, and don't forget, humans were not designed to digest plants. That's the first thing that I talked about in this video. We don't have the digestive system for that. We don't have the adapted hindgut. We have a very, very long small intestine, which is made to digest meats and fats. That's it. And, you know, of course, sugars, but not plant fibers. So keep that in mind when if you're considering a 100% plant diet. Do I like vegans? No, I absolutely hate them. And if you're expecting me to say I don't want to insult any vegan with this video, I do. I do. You're absolutely ruining your own life, and hopefully you're not ruining someone else's. But knowing you, you probably can't keep your mouth shut about how vegan you are, so just stop. You're going to end up killing us all. Then you've got a plant-based diet, which is a percentage of plant, usually a high percentage because it's plant-based, and then you've got, you know, a percentage of meat, or at least animal-derived foods. For example, milk honey, eggs, very important, cheese, comes from honey, things like that. These tend to be high calorie and high protein and high fat things that are very useful for a culture that is trying to survive long term without much technology. It was one of the things that led us to have a more long-term culture and long-term cities and things like that, being able to get things from animals and process them to make them last longer, cheese, for example. Now, among these plant-based diets is the vegetarian diet. Now, unlike vegans, vegetarians are a tried and true way of eating. In fact, my favorite peoples, the Indians, are mostly vegetarian. Really, not everyone, of course, but mostly they're vegetarian. And they've been vegetarian for millennia. So it obviously works. The Romans, ancient Romans, used to be vegetarian. Well, not vegetarian, they would eat meat, but they were plant-based. They mostly ate bread, olives, things like that. And of course, they would sprinkle in some meat from time to time, especially if you were from the higher noble society. Also lots of seafood and shellfish and things like that. So yeah, vegetarians, same thing as vegans, I guess, but they also eat animal-derived products like milk and cheese and things like that. Absolutely sustainable, 100%. I would recommend it. I mean, I wouldn't stay a vegetarian. I tried being a vegetarian and it wasn't my thing, to be honest. But I will say they're absolutely sustainable if you do it right, of course. Make sure you eat well and, pay attention to what you're eating. Like, you can't just eat, sugars and things like that all the time. You still have to pay attention. But, have a good mix and listen to your body. And if your body says, oh, I need more meat, then eat more protein, let's say, then, eat some eggs or something like that. So yeah, those are the vegetarians. And oh my God, we're running out. Actually, I might have to finish the video here, but that talked more about the plant-based diet and the benefits and non-benefits of a plant-based diet. Remember, your body was not made to eat fiber. It just wasn't. It's not. Like, look at the digestive system and compare it to every other animal. We're more like carnivores. So if you rely only on fiber, you're going to have gut problems and all these symptoms that I told you. And also remember that this is food. At the end of the day, you're just feeding yourself. This is not religion. So that's another thing I don't like about vegans. They're sort of trapped in a pseudo-religious sort of bubble where you can be part of this diet and love animals, but if you give up one, you're giving up the other. And I don't like that sort of fanaticism. I really don't. And I don't like vegans in general. They failed me as human beings. I've met many of them. I've met many vegans, and they've all failed me as human beings. Not like the vegetarians. Absolutely wonderful people. Everyone eats a vegan meal from time to time. They're delicious. So yeah, that's plant-based diets. Next time I'm going to talk about a couple of more diets and other crazier diets too. They're the other extreme. So thank you so much for watching. Pretty educative episode. Hopefully I didn't say anything wrong. I'm pretty sure that what I said can be backed up with facts. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.